Hi there, hello, salut, bonjour. I hope you're doing very well from wherever you're watching at this moment, be it in Yaoundé, Douala, Bafoussam, Garwa, Marwa, Boya, even from Toronto to Paris, Brussels, Johannesburg, Dubai, even in New York. I need you to pause for a moment, because today is not a normal show. This is a quick, serious update. Georges Anicet Ekane, president of Manidem, longtime opposition figure, has died. According to his lawyer, Maître Emmanuel Sim, the national president of Manidem succumbed to illnesses this 1st of December 2025. He dies weeks after his arrest in the post-electoral crackdown, after repeated alerts that his health was critical and that he was being deprived of life-saving medical equipment while in custody. Today, very simply, we will do three things. Number one, remind you who he was and why his name matters. Number two, reconstruct what we know about his arrest, detention, and illness. And finally, ask what his death means for Cameroon's struggle at this precise moment. Let's start with the man and not the headline. Who was Georges Anicet Ekane? Georges Anicet Ekane was not a new face of 2025. Born on the 17th of April 1951 in Douala, he was shaped early by history. As a teenager, he witnessed the public execution of Ernest Wange in Bafoussam in January 1971, the last historic leader of the UPC. That scene marks him for life. He studies in France, militates in the UPC from the 1970s, returns to Cameroon in the 1980s, and works with Yaoundé Black, that you all know, someone who fought for the return of multi-party politics in Cameroon, and other Democrats in the underground networks that challenged the one-party system. He later leads the Mouvement Africain pour la Nouvelle Indépendance et la Démocratie, Manidem, a left wing, basically understood by the West, a nationalist party born from the UPC tradition. He is a 2011 presidential candidate, a permanent critic of neo-colonial dependency and authoritarianism. In 2025, a central figure in the complex alliances around the presidential election. First, visibly around Professor Maurice Kamto. Then, later, presenting Issa Tchiroma Bakary as a passeur capable of breaking the Biya system. In short, he is part of a political generation that links Ernest Wange, Yaoundé Black, the 1990s struggles, and today's resistance. The kind of person whose life story already says something about the price of dissent in Cameroon. Now, let's move from biography to the last weeks of his life. From October 12, 2025 to December 1st, 2025, a deadly timeline. First, let's talk about the election and his arrest. October 12, 2025, Cameroon votes in a presidential election. Manidem is part of the l'Union pour le Changement, UPC, Union for Change, a coalition that backs Issa Tchiroma Bakary against Paul Biya, one of the world's longest-serving president. A partial result circulates and the regime signals another Biya victory. Protest erupts because at the polling station on that same night, on October 12, Cameroonians witnessed a lot of electoral fraud, documented the evidence, and were able to track real-time results because, according to Section 113 of the Electoral Code, the results of each polling station is made public on the day of elections, as soon as the polls close and the counting is done. Based on that, Anicet Ekane and Chamani were able to make statements that indicate Issa Tchiroma Bakary was leading and was the candidate who would be declared the winner of the elections. Only that on October 25, the 25th of October 2025, amid demonstrations in Douala and other cities, following this purported victory of President Paul Biya, the incumbent, instead of Issa Tchiroma Bakary, as expected, based on the euphoria and the circulation of different tallies on the night of election and thereafter. Security forces arrest several opposition figures, including Anicet Ekane and Chamani, both key figures for the Union for Change. Authorities describe this as an insurrectional movement and accuse them of plotting violence. Within days, Ekane and others are referred to a military tribunal on heavy charges: hostilité envers la patrie, révolution, incitation à la révolte, appel à l'insurrection. So the first point is clear. He did not die as a free man in his bed. He died after being arrested for contesting an election and supporting an opposition candidate, Issa Tchiroma Bakary. Now, let's move on to talk about a sick man in the hands of the state. From mid-November, alarms start ringing. Reports from his lawyers and party say Ekane is gravely ill, dependent on an oxygen concentrator to breathe. He is held in a medical center of the National Gendarmerie. Sources mention Douala and Yaoundé at different times, but his medical equipment is confiscated at the time of arrest, along with the belongings of his driver, Mr. Njoya Hajuma. Manidem and relatives denounce what they call a mort programmée, a programmed death, because depriving an oxygen-dependent patient of his device is effectively a death sentence. Independent outlets were also publishing worrying updates. He is struggling to breathe. His health is deteriorating, and authorities are dragging their feet on restoring full access to his equipment or granting proper evacuation. However, a few days ago, some of his medical equipments are reportedly returned, but his lawyers say they have not yet been fully checked and his condition is already critical. Today, 1st of December 2025, we hear nécrologie. Anicet Ekane est mort. Il a succombé à la maladie ce 1er décembre 2025. Quoting his lawyer. Some say he died still effectively under detention. Others say after release for care. Those details may become clearer in the coming hours or days. But everyone agrees on one essential point. His death comes directly after a period where the state arrested him, held him under accusation for insurrection, and mishandled at minimum his critical medical condition. So, what does this mean beyond the sadness and the anger? What this death says, the lessons, the fears, the implications. I want to propose 4 big reflections, not to close the debate, but to open it, adding to a long line of martyrs and broken lives. From the execution of Ernest Wanje in 1971, which young Ekane witnessed, to the repression of Yondo Blacks group in 1990, to the killings during the 2008 riots, the Anglophone crisis, and now the death of Ekane himself, we see the same thread. In Cameroon, the price for challenging the system is often paid with your blood, your health, or your freedom. Ekane's trajectory from watching Yaoundé die to leading Manidem to dying after an election dispute in a circle that should haunt all of us. When justice and health become weapons, there are two levels of responsibility here. Judicial. He was charged with hostility against the fatherland and insurrection, essentially for political activity and speech around a disputed election. Medical. Credible reports say a known seriously ill oxygen-dependent detainee had his equipment confiscated and that authorities were warned repeatedly that this put his life at immediate risk. Even if you accept the official line that he died from illness, a basic moral and legal question remains. If the state takes custody of a sick person and then deprives him of vital equipment, is that just illness, or is it state responsibility for his death? For many Cameroonians, this will not look like a neutral medical tragedy. It would look like another political prisoner who never came back. And now, the message to the resistance. What message does this send, consciously or not? To opposition figures and activists, if we don't break you with court cases, we can break you with your own body. You may enter prison alive. We don't guarantee how you come out. To ordinary citizens who march after the election, see what happens to those who stand too close to the fire. The danger is double. Some may become radicalized, thinking peaceful political action is suicidal and only violence makes sense, while others may sink into resignation, saying, if even someone like Ekane dies like this, what can we do? Both extremes, that is, blind violence and hopeless apathy, serve the system. And what a mature resistance must do with this is what we need to reflect upon. I'm not here to tell you to burn, loot, or to stay home and be quiet. I'm here to say this death must not disappear in 48 hours of social media noise. It should be documented. Medical records, legal files, testimonies of his lawyers, family, co-detainees. It should be connected to a broader demand, protection and monitoring of all political detainees and protesters arrested since October 12. It should be pushed at national and international levels. Human rights bodies, regional organizations, diaspora advocacy. And inside the struggle itself, leaders and movements must depersonalize the fight. When one person falls, the work continues. Better organized, better protected. Youth must be invited not just to react emotionally, but to learn how to document abuses, how to protect themselves legally, how to build networks instead of waiting for heroes. Let's close with what we know for sure and what we must not forget. He was arrested on the 25th of October 2025 during protests after the October 12 presidential election, then charged with insurrectionary offenses before a military tribunal. He was seriously ill and dependent on an oxygen concentrator. Credible reports say this equipment was confiscated by security forces, despite repeated warnings from his lawyers and party that his life was in danger. Today, his lawyer confirms he has died from illness, in a context where the state had taken responsibility for his body and his health. Whether you agree with all his choices or not, one thing is clear. No republic should be a place where an old, sick opposition leader dies right after an election, surrounded by accusations of insurrection and reports of medical neglect. His death is a mirror. It reflects how far the regime is willing to go. It reflects how vulnerable dissenters remain. It reflects how urgent it is for Cameroonians, especially the youth, to think clearly about what kind of struggle they want: organized, documented, and strategic, or chaotic and easily crushed. And I will end with this. Georges Anicet Ekane began his political journey watching Ernest Wanje executed in Bafoussam. Today, a new generation is watching him die after an election fought in the name of sovereignty and dignity. The question is, what will you do with this image? Will it be just another piece of bad news? Or the moment you decide that Cameroonian lives and Cameroonian votes are too precious to be treated this way ever again? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If this spoke to you, share it. Talk about it. Document what you know. And above all, remain vigilant. 2025 seems to be a turning point in the life of Cameroon. And until the next one, may God bless Cameroon.